right at the end of the event. But now it's nearly time for our second keynote session, and I am delighted to be able to give Cider Women the stage this morning. And it's Cider Women Redressing the Balance, an interactive session exploring everything from the historical roots of women's place in the world of cider and orcharding to how we can all work together to shape the future and grow this dynamic and creative industry into an even more inclusive and diverse space. So it's with great pleasure that I'm able to welcome Susannah Forbes to the stage. And take it away, Susannah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Simon. It's absolutely wonderful to be here. Welcome, everyone. It's great to see so many folks across the ether. Thank you for joining us, whether you're live or it's on replay. The real benefit of this wonderful virtual conference. Good on you guys at CraftCon for giving us the stage. For those for whom this is live, I'm imagining a few ciders might just have been drunk last night, particularly among those who availed themselves of the amazing CraftCon box. So particularly pleased to welcome you on behalf of the Cider Women group to this, the first session of the second day of CraftCon. As Simon said, I'm one of the founders of Cider Women. I'm one half of Little Pomona, and we have a packed session. So I'm going to dive straight in. I'm going to do this little bit of screen sharing just for a few little slides, and just bear with me as we get there. I'm learning so much in this wonderful virtual world of ours. For the Cider Women group, it's particularly special to be invited to share this time with you. After all, it was at the inaugural CraftCon 2 years ago in 2019 that the seeds of what you see here were sown. There was such a thrill to be among so many like-minded craft cider producers, and yet us women, despite making up half of the cider market itself, were very much underrepresented. Yet this is probably still the largest gathering of women cider makers in the UK thus far. So we decided to mark the occasion with this photo taken by Kevin Woolley, lower left, and that's where it all began. A determined band of us got together soon after, plotted, planned, took in advice from sisters across the sea in pom boots, and then took up Elizabeth Pimblett's kind invite to launch the Cider Women group at the opening of the Museum of Cider's exhibition, Women and the Art of Cider, the central photo there. Then Kath Potter led an equally enthusiastic launch in Manchester a few months later. Fast forward 18 months and here we are. Elizabeth and Izzy Schultz are the co-chairs, and the initial steering group has been swelled by the welcome addition of Pomelier Kath Potter and talented aficionado. So they've joined Lydia from Artistraw, Fiona at Bartistry, Hannah Kniveton, and also the Red Lion. So with this wonderful group of women, we've been able to start redressing a balance, but what we need is your help now. The aim of our session is to gather in your ideas and how we can enable more women to get involved in the world of cider in all its guises. So far, we've had the chance to share our ethos and to raise the profile of women in cider. Thank you to all of those who've given us that opportunity. The list is really long and we really appreciate that. And Lydia is going to cover some of the highlights in just a bit. We've also been able to contribute to the debate on more inclusive marketing, but we really are only just beginning. So I want to share with you our plan for the next hour. Elizabeth is going to provide us with the all-important historical context. Lydia, with Artistraw Cider, will bring us up to date on Cider Women and its activities. And then we are so delighted that Lily Waite, founder of the Queer Brewing Project, will be giving us the benefit of her insight before we break off into groups focused on specific aspects where we'll be asking you for your ideas. Finally, we'll head back to the stage. Each group will share the ideas or tips they've come up with Izzy drawing them all together. I'll be here to guide you through. And before we invite Elizabeth onto the stage, just a little bit of housekeeping. The main sessions are being recorded. The breakup groups are not. Please do feel free to use the chat column to make any comments or add any information which will help our audience, and then the Q&A to pose the questions. Our schedule is ambitiously tight, but we'll certainly deal with as many as we can. Kath Potter in particular is going to keep an eye on them, and we may well handle them just before the breakout sessions if we have time, and or at the end. So let's kick off. So I'm delighted to be introducing you to Elizabeth Pimblett, who many or most of you will know, Director of the Museum of Cider, a member of the Three Counties Cider and Perry Association Steering Committee, as well as co-chair of Cider Women. A social historian by profession, Elizabeth has a strong background in heritage, coupled with having been brought up in the fair county of Herefordshire. So who better to give us an idea of the history of women in cider? Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Susanna. Right, hello everybody. Really lovely to have you all here. So in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to be talking you through the history of women's involvement in cider using images from the museum's collections. So I have even less than 10 minutes now, so we'll race through. As I was saying, there are various points in the life of cider where women could have been involved. So we have apple picking, orchard management. We have apple pressing. So this is a rather lovely early picture from Somerset. We have books on cider research, particularly in the 17th century, in the heyday of excitement about cider. We have cider being used as a social lubricant. It's out in the fields. Here they are drinking cider from a costrel when they're harvesting. Social drinking, of course, it's hugely important. So we have a gentleman here drinking cider out of his horn mug. Obviously lots of pub images in the museum's collection. Working in a cider factory. So here we have some very important key decision makers at Bulmers in the 1970s. Advertising cider. But as you may have noticed, all the previous images are of men. And if you're a woman looking for representation, if you're interested in cider and you're looking at some historic accounts, you can be forgiven for thinking that we've had little or no involvement. The point is, when images are chosen to tell the story of cider in the past, proper representation has not been high in the list of importance. And then you get images like this. There are, in fact, many images of women in the archives, but when you're a woman wanting to be taken seriously, some of these pre-Portman Code ones can be off-putting. The subject matter really matters. Sexualized images can feel demeaning, and it's a toxic legacy. Actually, there is a huge history to women's involvement in cider making and drinking. So let's look at the subject areas again. Orchards. This late 19th, early 20th century image from Herefordshire shows both men and women collecting apples and putting them in tumps. Until the mid-20th century, apple picking gangs in Herefordshire were predominantly women. But in actual fact, they were picking apples in the 17th century too. So this is from Lord Scudamore farm accounts, again in Herefordshire, famous cider maker, the Red Streak originator. And underneath the men's names to be paid for gathering apples and making cider are the names of two women, Kate Bowen and Marjorie Brace. At the same period, Woburn Abbey in Bedfordshire accounts also show women being paid for apple picking for cider. This lovely and quite rare realist image by artist Henry Lethang shows apple pressing in late Victorian Sussex, and it's very much a shared enterprise. And although they were helpers on the farm, somehow women's contribution became eclipsed. It's a problem we can still encounter. People assume the husband is in an enterprise is the cider authority. When it came to research and history, the famous names, Beale, Evelyn, Whirlidge, Andrew Knight, Hogg and Bull, are all male. The main reason for this is that women's education was pretty feeble, and the disapproval they faced if they wanted to undertake serious study was extremely off-putting. Science was unladylike. membership of the Royal Society and other similar clubs was forbidden to women. Where they could make a contribution, it was through the medium of an accepted female hobby. An interest in the natural world was approved as long as they did not use scientific terms, and watercolour painting was de rigueur for a lady. Here we have Edith, the 19-year-old daughter of Dr. Bull. Her father was a horticultural expert and polymath, who was one of those responsible for the hugely important Woolhope Club Herefordshire Pomona in the late 19th century. Without the superb, accurately observed paintings of the apples, pears, and other fruits by Edith and Alice Ellis, the Pomonas would not have been produced. We have them here in the museum. Professional artists were at the time too expensive. At the same time, working women were also being paid in cider as part of their labourers' wages. This scene from Worcestershire in about 1910 shows women haymakers pouring from a ceramic flagon along with men and children. We have plenty of images from the 1890s to the 1940s of women being used to portray cider as being pure or of a high quality. So even then, they knew that women were a key audience. This is from Weston's, it's about 1930. And obviously it's promoting cider as wine. In about 1985, Bulmers identified women as being of growing importance as cider customers. Women were key workers in the cider factories from the late Victorian period onwards. This Bulmers photograph on the left, which is about 1905, shows how many there were. They were bottlers, packers, secretarial staff, champagne cider riddlers. And probably one of the main reasons for this was until 1970 in the Equal Pay Act, women were paid less than men, so they were a cheaper workforce. And then you can also see in 1974, Bulmer's first female supervisor. She obviously has been told to pose, I would suggest, and still at this time, they weren't involved as cider makers, but they were important lab technicians. Apparently, the women in 1905 enjoyed working in the factory so much, Fred Bulmer couldn't get them to come to be servants in his house. So, to a certain extent, we're reclaiming lost ground. In medieval and Tudor times, creating drinks for the household was seen as a housewife's duty. Ale and cider were either produced by or supervised by her. Gervase Markham in 1617 wrote, "Our English housewife is experienced in the brewing of these several drinks." In his manual, which is aimed at women, he gives a couple of recipes for cider. These same 17th century women emigrating to America took their cider skills with them. It's still a moot point whether early modern West Country women made and sold their own cider in their cider houses, which are referenced in some court documents. It does merit further investigation. In the same period, alewives brewed and ran their own establishments. A landlady was a socially acceptable job for a single woman or widow right up until the present day. And so here we have a license for Sarah Bull to sell beer, ale, cider, and other liquors in Hereford in 1822. So the point is, women have always been there in the background, like in this Devon image, quietly getting on. And it's very much a communal effort, although in this image, your eye is drawn to the dynamic physical pose of the man in the foreground, but they are all there. So to sum up, why women have not been preeminent in cider making in past historical accounts. Physical tasks are perceived as needing male strength. Female contributions have been dismissed. They've been excluded from proper education. Localised nature of cider making means that in later periods, it was very much a West Country thing. They had a problem until Victorian times. You could make money and your husband was entitled to take it. Cider has always been seen in some images as a man's drink, but as you can see from what we've just seen, that's not the case. We do have a problem that the male spouse or partner can be seen as the actual figurehead for a business. There's been a lack of opportunity, training, and simply being unrecognised. But we do have some trailblazers. So in the 1980s and the 1990s, some key women start to come to the fore. So here are just two: Jean Noel, craft cider maker, who mentored so many, and Liz Kopaz of Long Ashton, an order of cider apples, the New Pomona, are just two that we look up to and who are widely respected regardless of gender. I could mention more, but I think we need to push on. So to conclude, cider has always been part and parcel of women's life over the centuries, from medieval references to this. Hannah Woolmore of Worcestershire, she was born in 1666. She died 104 years later. She always ate very sparingly of meat, and her drink was cider. So here's to Cider Women. Our drink is cider. Right. Okay, so that's everything that I have to say. It's a bit of a rattle through. And I'm sorry about the technical issues to begin with, but I hope it's given you an overview. Women have been involved since medieval times, and now we are finally really getting back to where we originally were.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. That was absolutely wonderful, and I've learned a lot. Every time I go to your museum, something new crops up, and I would love that Bulmer's 1905 picture. What a great image of the real teams. I feel that, as you say, it's more like reclaiming lost ground, and I particularly love the last 2 points on your slide of why has this happened. The last one you said about training opportunities. And so let's hope that one of the things that might come out of this is more opportunities for people to get in and get involved, and therefore become part of this exciting world. So now we would like to bring this right up to date, and I'm thrilled to hand over to fellow Cider Women founder Lydia Crimp of Artist Straw Cider. She's going to tell us what Cider Women has been up to, and also what we've got planned for the next few months. A theatre costume designer by trade, Lydia is a passionate environmentalist. She's very determined to tread lightly on these soils, and she is as inventive as she is committed. One of her latest triumphs, which I'm adoring, is organic inks from the vegetables they grow for their wonderful labels. I really do urge everyone to go and check out their website. You'll love it. Always full of ideas. Today, Lydia's going to update us all on Cider Women, present and future. Thanks, Lydia.
Oh, thanks, Susanna. That was a lovely introduction. So I'm going to give you a very brief update on where we're at with Cider Women at the moment. So since forming in 2019 at CraftCon, Susanna said, we've gained 255 members, and that's all over the world, mostly obviously in this country, but yeah, as far away as Japan and quite a few in the States as well. We've got 2 pages. So there is a page that anyone can follow and sort of see what we're up to, and that's got about 500 members. So yeah, it doesn't matter what gender you are. If you're interested in what we're doing, head over to Facebook and find our open page. So we've been quite scuppered by COVID, us and the rest of the world since we started. But we've managed to do a few online events last year, and we're really hoping to kind of bring everything into the real world this year. And with that, we're actually going to have a competition this year at Broom Farm. So we're going to, which will also include our first AGM as well, which is very exciting. So the competition will not be, I don't know how to say it, not sort of head-to-head battle. It'll be more of a sort of gentle tasting, and we'll discover more about each other's ciders and learn to taste cider. And that, again, is open to anyone to come along. It's only women who are allowed to enter into the competition, but we really want to encourage everyone to turn up and try ciders made by women. In terms of the future, we're really hoping to kind of continue on this focus of education and really kind of spreading the good word of cider and trying to get more women involved in it, as well as all learning from each other. So I'm going to hand over, well, I'm not going to hand over it, so I'm going to interview our very, very special guest, Lily Waite, who is a beer writer, photographer and ceramicist, if that wasn't enough. She's the winner of multiple awards, including the UK Beer Writer of the Year, and she was in Vibe Magazine's Trailblazer of the Year in 2020. And she's also the founder of Queer Brewing. So yeah, I'm very excited to welcome Lily to the stage and ask her a few questions about how she got started and things like that. if she's here. She's here. Hello.
Hi. How you doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you. So yeah, can we start with how did you get into brewing? Like what sort of prompted you to get started?
So I guess from the off, I'll just sort of clarify that I don't necessarily consider myself a brewer. I never had any sort of brewing training. I think the first time I brewed anything was when I went to the Colonel Brewery, just to sort of tag along for a brew day to understand it. So my background in beer, sort of beyond hospitality, which was how I got into everything, was through writing. So I think I was working in a bottle shop that was quite quiet. So I sort of had some time on my hands. And I started my blog, which was called Craft Queer, which is an excellent pun if you ask me, which sort of looked at my experience as a queer trans woman in the beer industry, and sort of the intersections of those parts of my identity with a very homogenous sort of cisgender, heterosexual male industry. So I looked at sort of diversity and inclusion a lot. Sort of that was the premise of the blog. And as well, the first article I wrote was called From Both Sides. It was essentially a look at the beer industry through, or from my perspectives of sort of having presented as male and then post-transitioning, how I was perceived as female and sort of the insight I saw into the beer industry's interactions with gender. So then after writing about beer for sort of, I think about a year or so, and appearing on quite a few diversity panels and sort of having the same conversations over and over again, whether it was through writing or speaking or whatever, I grew quite tired of just the same conversations and lots of the same talk and not much happening. So I started thinking about what I could do personally to make a difference, because I realized that there was a lot of discussion without action. So I started the Queer Brewing Project as a way to do something and try and make some positive change. Initially, Queer Brewing was a collaborative project. So my aim was to team up with existing brewers, sort of initially just in the UK, though it grew to beyond that quite quickly. And make one-off collaboration beers and then donate a proportion of the proceeds to LGBTQ charities. So I was trying to make like a tangible difference by raising money for charities that really needed support, but also I wanted to start conversations and sort of raise awareness of LGBTQ issues. And yeah, so that was sort of how I got into brewing, I guess. I still haven't really brewed anything myself, despite us having our own core range now. But I think I've been incredibly lucky in the support that I've had from across the brewing industry.
That's amazing.
Help that vision grow.
Has there been any negative reaction? Have you had any problems? And we've sort of been talking about sort of the challenges that we face as women in the cider industry occasionally. Have you felt that in the brewing world, and how have you tackled those things, or how have you sort of?
I think inevitably I've had a range of sort of negative responses, from just personal attacks on sort of me and my identity to people ignoring the significance of what we're doing. I'm lucky in that I don't think I necessarily encountered many barriers to access when I got into beer. But yeah, sort of the main thing I sort of experienced was just relatively mundane homophobia and transphobia. Obviously it's not great, it's quite a serious thing, but I've learned to grow a thick skin. But yeah, I think a lot of people have been really, really supportive and have sort of seen merit in what we're doing. But there have been sort of inevitably just a few people like, oh, why does beer have to be gay? And it's like, well, that's not quite the point.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, that's one of the sort of important takeaways for me, is that people really do want to try and make the beer, and sort of extrapolating from that cider and wine and spirits and the whole drink space. They want to make it a better space, but sometimes just don't know how to do anything. So we kind of, what we do at Queer Brewing is in some way existing as a lightning rod for that.
Yeah, I think that's a key thing, isn't it? I mean, people forget that actually most people sort of enjoy drinking alcoholic beverages, I'd say. So, you know, the more people we welcome in, the better it is for everyone, right? It's a win-win situation. So yeah, that's not
exactly.
hostile.
But I think that's one of the big problems is sort of gatekeeping.
Yeah.
And we've seen that quite recently. We just launched a collaboration pack with Cloudwater, who we've partnered with since sort of second half of last year. So around last summer, I started to quite sort of falter in my vision for queer brewing because it was still just me at that point, and didn't really have any direction. And then the lovely team at Cloudwater Brewco in Manchester sort of stepped in, and I was their first Wayfinder as part of their Wayfinder program, which is a really interesting initiative to sort of lift up underrepresented voices in the brewing world. But off the back of that, they sort of have started producing our core range for us and helping out with that. But we did a collaboration that's gone into Tesco in a 4-pack with 3 other fantastic breweries, Rock Leopard, Echo, and Good Karma, who you should all absolutely check out.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that. Well done.
It's amazing. It's a really sort of significant move for the industry.
It's very cool.
But there were a lot of people who were like, oh, well, like there were some legitimate concerns as well. But there was some straight gatekeeping where people seemed to just not want to open up the beer world to other people. And I think one thing that a lot of people forget is that by bringing more people in, not only is it sort of the right thing to do ethically and morally, but also there's so many like business advantages to broadening the net and bringing more people in and getting more people involved. Yeah,
definitely. So what are your hopes for the future then? What's the plans? What's next in the pipeline?
We've got big plans. So it started as just me, and now we're a team of 3, 2 full-time and 1 part-time. And sort of from the off, although the aims of queer brewing have changed from sort of wanting to raise awareness and sort of start discussions about certain things, I think the time for raising awareness is perhaps past, and now we need to tackle things a little more head on. Now we're trying to promote visibility and be that representation for not just LGBTQ people, but just sort of people across the industry who are looking to just better the space we're in. But it's always been about taking up space. And I think one of the most important ways that we can do that now as in us at Queer Brewing is provide jobs for queer people across the industry, because there's so few of us. And hopefully by providing that representation and showing that this is a viable career for people who have otherwise felt overlooked or underrepresented, they can enjoy the space as much as anyone else, because they should be able to. So we're looking, hopefully within the next year or so, to open up our own tap room, which will be amazing. Like, what we're trying to do is not create the same sort of tap room as other breweries, in that there's nothing wrong with what they do, but sometimes they can be quite intimidating spaces, or they can be quite predicated on an understanding or knowledge of beer. So essentially, we just want to make a really fun gay bar that pours our products, and also amazing ciders, amazing wines. Sort of, we need to. One of the things we really want to do is have a really good non-alcoholic range as well, because I think sometimes drinking spaces can overlook sober people or sort of mindful drinkers as well.
Designated drivers.
Yes, absolutely. Just because some people might want to go and drink booze doesn't mean that everyone in that party would necessarily.
Yeah.
But the other sort of really important thing that we want to do, which is a bit more of a pipe dream, but potentially looming closer, is open our own brewery.
Oh, wow.
So actually provide brewing roles for queer people. Again, there's not that many throughout the actual brewing sector. And again, it wouldn't be me leading that in terms of the brewing, because I still don't have any brewing qualifications, which I might do. But yeah, we like the idea of creating our own space where we can have more creativity and more control over what we do, but also really take up space in a really tangible way. Is really exciting. I remember when we launched our first beer, which was called Queer Royale, which was a blackcurrant pale ale. Martin Goodwin-Sharman of Neutral Cider Hotel and The Good Measure, not too long ago actually told me sort of the impact he saw on people who walked into The Good Measure and saw just the word queer on the tap list, and that's something that's really stuck with me. And that's why sort of we changed the name of, or we operate now more as Queer Brewing rather than the Queer Brewing Project, and it's just so big and bold on our cans. Because even just seeing a word that recognises you can be really impactful. So the more beer we can put out that sort of shows people that they're welcome in this space, the better.
And having that big and bold on a supermarket shelf, I mean, that's going to have a huge impact, right? I mean, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's we think we've done some research into it. We can't be sure, but we think this is the first time the word queer has ever appeared in a supermarket in the UK.
Oh, brilliant! That's so
which
good.
Is really exciting.
Yeah,
I think sometimes it feels like, obviously, I think representation isn't necessarily the end goal, but it's certainly a significant part of diversifying any space. And I really am excited just to have that word available when you're just doing your shopping, and someone might see it and just feel seen by it.
Yeah, definitely. That's so interesting, and yeah, congratulations. It sounds like you've got so many exciting things in the pipeline, and I am really excited about coming to the bar as well. I think
it's going to be really good fun. We're going to have regular yacht rock nights. Oh no.
I know it could have carried on for ages. This is so interesting, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you to all the organisers for inviting me.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, and I absolutely love what Cider Women are doing.
Well, thank you.
Happy to be part of it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lydia. Thank you so much, Lily. That was so inspiring, and there's so many things that you've shared with us, and it is all about making this world a better space. But I love the way you've highlighted various elements which perhaps we will now take into our breakout sessions. So everyone, I hope, will go and join a breakout session. There are 3 themes. Please choose whatever you would like to contribute to, because if you're with a bigger producer, are you going to be the place that can offer perhaps an apprenticeship, or perhaps some volunteer opportunities, or perhaps some mentorship? So I think this is the way we're hopefully going to help our community take up more space. Maybe there will be jobs at the end of it. I was lucky enough to be part of the Women's International Beer Summit last weekend, and just a few cider sessions. But the point is that they were offering scholarships to people who were attending. And yes, you had to apply or whatever. But the point is, maybe next year, CraftCon might have some little things that they could offer. So let's see where we get to. So now what I want to do is direct you to the next step. So we're going to go into our sessions, and just to repeat, there's 3 of them. There's orcharding and production, there's marketing and wider networks, and that kind of encompasses, if you like, the cider world as a whole. And then there's serving and selling and tasting. And if you all hop over to the sessions tab and scroll down, you will find those. If you click on the appropriate one, you'll be able to join. It might just take a couple of minutes for us to scurry over. All of us Cider Women steering group will be in those, and we'll be moderating, and we really look forward to your suggestions. So I'm going to synchronize. I'm going to say, so it's about 10:08 now. So by 10:20, let's all reconvene back on the main stage, and then Izzy will be gathering up our ideas. So if everyone's all right with that, let's hop over to the sessions. I will see you there. Bye for now.